Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Brr, it's cold out there. -2 degrees is what's on my little temperature gauge here in the office. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh man, when is it going to get warm? It's actually going to get warm next week. I was looking like it could possibly get up into the 50s next week. So it's only temporary. Don't worry, folks. It's only temporary. So we've got so much to get to today. And I'm so excited because there's so many funny stories out there. JD Vance, one of my favorite ones this morning is JD Vance calling somebody from MSNBC just straight up a dummy. So we're going to get to that here in a few moments, but I want to start out with this Illinois bill that was recently introduced. I really like it. Well, I should say that it should go further. That's my opinion. I've always talked about how property taxes are unconstitutional. This Illinois bill was introduced by State Senator Neil Anderson and eliminating property taxes for homeowners after 30 years of residency. And I really like this bill because he was very careful not to include, the people who would benefit from this, like say the BlackRock. They have a bunch of apartment buildings or these huge mega, apartment complexes owned by BlackRock or evil corporations. Okay, it doesn't benefit them at all. They still have to pay property taxes. The bill's intent is not for properties that generate income. Now, I would like to see it kind of adjusted to where landlords, your small landlords, they don't have to pay property taxes. To be honest with you, though, nobody should really be paying property taxes, but he was careful because this is a bill that would really benefit, just single family residences, people who live in their home for 30 plus years. Now, I think that the bill should go further. I would love to eliminate property taxes, period. Okay, because I think they're unconstitutional. You have to own your property. Just try not paying your property taxes. Okay, if you don't pay your property taxes, you're going to get booted off of your land. And you've been paying for that land, okay? You take out a mortgage on your home. It's sitting on a plot of land, and you own it, okay? But you don't because you have to pay property taxes. If you don't pay property taxes, they're going to take that away from you. So I like this because this is a bill that was introduced. It's kind of like a happy medium, or like it's gonna be a bill where I think you could get potentially maybe a Democrat or two on board with this, maybe not. I don't know. I don't foresee this passing at all, but I thought it was interesting. So we're going to get to that. Plus, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, referred AOC to be investigated by the DOJ, and his reason why is totally awesome. We're going to get to that. Plus, liberal women. This is the story today that was not so shocking. It's not very shocking at all, not very surprising. It's a new poll. It found that liberal women tend to be the most unhappy and the most lonely. Yes, according to this new poll. So we're going to get to all of it here on Conservative Cat. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. As always, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out. Also, helping me out if you email me and you're a business owner and you want to advertise with me. I'll work with you and we can get you an advertising schedule. You can be a sponsor of this show if you'd like. So you can email me cat, C-A-T, like the animal, C-A-T, at gpmbloomington, gpmbloomington.com. That helps us out a lot too, as of course, if you advertise with us and you're a business owner and, a lot of people listen to this program. Believe it or not, even the liberals listen to this program. Don't believe me? Just go check out the comment section just one day. Even the liberals love this show. They listen every single morning. In fact, I would say that the liberals are listen even more than conservatives do to the program, which is wild to me. So we're going to get to this bill. This is an important one. You can file proponent slips. I really like this bill. I think it could go further. I'd love to see a complete elimination of property taxes. Really what your property taxes go towards the schools. I'm not even going to go on that tangent right now. They're, robbing you blind, those schools, because they've got this 1%, sales tax, county facilities, county schools facility tax that they've got on the ballot this year. they're looking to rob you, the schools. So they're going to find their money some other way if we eliminate property taxes. Okay, likely it's going to be some sort of sales tax. I'm not against sales tax. I think that is like the most constitutional of taxes. Income tax, I really don't like income tax, and property taxes, don't like those either. Sales tax, I can get down with. Okay, I understand that we need to have some taxation. I'm not against taxation completely, but they've figured out ways to tax you for simply breathing practically in this country. And we need to stop that or eliminate some of these taxes. And that's what this lawmaker is doing, kind of. He wants to end property taxes for qualified taxpayers who live and pay taxes on a residential home that they've been residing in for 30 years. So you get a mortgage on your house and it's a 20-year mortgage, you're not going to be qualified. Okay, so that kind of sucks. But State Senator Neil Anderson, he said at some point you have to own your property. Quote, this country was founded on freedom, property rights, and at some point you've got to be able to own your property. This bill is a way to keep people in Illinois. So think about this. You have a home for 20 years, and then you have the option of moving, to a different state because you're tired of being taxed in Illinois or it's cold here. Okay. But maybe what keeps you around is knowing that 10 years, you're not going to have to pay property taxes ever. Okay, now there's some states that don't even have property taxes, which I think Alaska, Nevada, I believe Nevada, I'd have to look that up, but there's a few states that don't even have property taxes. I would love to be one of those states, right? Because I think property taxes are unconstitutional. But he said, say you're tired of being taxed, say you just don't like the weather, that 10 years, knowing 10 years down the road, you won't have to pay property taxes because, you're kind of limited. Most states do have property taxes. That would separate us from most other states in the nation. And, that keeps you here in the state. You're like, okay, I'm going to stick this out another 10 years because then I don't have to pay property taxes. I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to stay in the state. I'm going to keep buying goods. Okay, so sales taxes. And we're going to pay taxes in a different way. We're still having income taxes and grocery taxes, local sales tax, gas tax. Okay, there's so many other ways that the state of Illinois taxed you. You're not going to not pay taxes. Okay, likely they're going to increase. And I wouldn't be totally against that, increasing sales taxes to make up for the revenue loss for, your public safety and basic infrastructure in your communities. I wouldn't be totally against raising the local sales taxes if you eliminate property taxes. But this is 30 years. We have to be realistic here as well. Do people stay in their homes for 30 years? I don't think so anymore. A lot of people, this isn't, like, oh, yes, this is going to help everybody kind of situation. Illinois lost 32,826 residents from July of 2022 to July of 2023, according to the U.S. Census Bureau data. J.B. Pritzker Jellybean, he'll deny those statistics till he's blue in the face. And that was the 10th consecutive year, folks, that we've had population loss in this state. So we got to do something that separates us from the rest of the nation. Anderson suspects that there will be opposition. He goes, I posted to Facebook and, I've gotten a lot of feedback on this bill. And I tend to agree with the people in the comment section saying, well, I owned my house for 20 years or, hey, I paid cash for it in the beginning. Why do I have to pay property taxes? And this guy, he had a 30-year mortgage, but I had a 20-year mortgage or whatever. And I paid my house off early. Why don't I get to, not pay property taxes? Neil Anderson says, look, I get it. I agree with you, but this bill is a starting point. We live in a reality where we have the supermajority Democrats, and this is a starting point. This is just to get somewhere to try to get Democrats to agree that, hey, at some point, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, we have to agree, whatever that time period is, that you've paid enough money and you should actually get to own the property that you have been paying on. Okay, so at some point you've got to have ownership of your property, and he's hoping that he can get Democrats, even if it's 50 years, if they want to extend this to 50 years, he's hoping that he could get a Democrat on board. I'm going to tell you what will happen with this bill. I've seen it before. There's a lot of great bills for property tax relief out there. This isn't a property tax relief bill. This is a property rights bill. Okay. This is a constitutional bill and trying to fix, the unconstitutionality of property taxes. Okay. So this isn't really property tax relief. This is just, hey, we have to actually own our property at some point here in America, right? But there's a lot of really great bills out there. Like I've talked about Brad Holbrook, State Representative Brad Holbrook. He had a bill out there that, tells local municipalities, hey, you can't raise the property tax levy for, from 2026 to 2030. You can't raise that property tax levy, which doesn't mean that their revenue isn't going to go up, because property values go up with inflation over time. So their revenue is going to keep going up. But hey, you can't overtaxate or tax. You can't do this overtaxation on your residents in your county. So McLean County, I think their property tax levy actually went up. Their rate went up. So they're on top of, the property values going up, collecting even more because they adjusted that rate and they increased that rate. So Brad Holbrook's bill says, no, for 5 years, we need some sort of property tax relief. I'll tell you what'll happen to this bill, Brad Holbrook's bill. It's going to die. Here's why. The House Speaker is the one, he's a Democrat, Chris Welch. He's the one who decides which bills get called. Okay, this is why Michael Madigan was as corrupt as he was. He had so much power being the House Speaker in the state of Illinois, and we haven't adjusted the Speaker's powers here in the state. No ethics reform. So the House Speaker, if he doesn't want that bill, the bill's not going to get called, and it's not even going to be heard probably. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. The state senator, Dave Syverson, he's a Republican from Cherry Valley. He's supporting Senate Bill 1862. This is the bill that says that qualified taxpayers or individuals for at least 30 continuous years as of Jan 1st of the taxable year have occupied the same homestead property as a principal residence, and they'd be exempt. Those taxpayers, qualified taxpayers, would be exempt from paying property taxes after 30 years. Okay, so now the bill does not apply to property. So that was my major concern with this. I was like, wait a second. What if the companies like BlackRock, now they've got a lot of properties, companies like BlackRock have a lot of properties in Chicago, these major apartment complex, multi-family housing complexes. They're going to benefit from this as well. No. They're not. A qualified homestead property is defined as a single family residence, and it has to be a principal residence. So you have to actually be living there. You have to actually be paying taxes there, and it's not designed for properties that provide income. That's not the bill's intent. It doesn't apply to properties that provide income. So overall, I think that Senator Neil Anderson thought of a lot with this bill. He explained that the bill was not created to provide property tax relief for Illinoisans who pay the highest property taxes in the nation, by the way, but rather he would have introduced this if we lived in Texas, Tennessee, where property taxes are super low. At some point, you've got to say, yes, I own my property and they can't take it away from me. That's what this is about. It's about the constitutionality of property rights and having property rights. Anderson doubts that the legislation is going to pass. He says that he's willing to compromise if the Democrats, want to go 50 years, that's fine. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. Democrat versus Republican. This is a constitutional issue. He's hoping that some Democrats will agree with the sentiment of, yeah, we have to own our property at some point. At some point, you've paid enough, and you shouldn't have that property taken away from you. Try not paying your property taxes; they'll come and take that away from you. Even if your house is paid off. Okay, so say your house is completely paid off, and you stop paying property taxes. You will be booted off of your land that you worked hard for and paid off, and that's not right. So this is trying to remedy that in a very non-controversial way, I guess, in a very nonpartisan way. This isn't like a bill that I would have drafted up, and this is why I'm not a state legislator, right? I would have drafted up a bill and I would have said, eliminate them completely. But you got to start somewhere. So it's a very smart bill. I love it. I'm glad that he brought this forward. It's very constitutional, very American. I'm going to be right back. We're going to talk about how AOC is going to be investigated by the DOJ at the behest of Tom Homan. We're right back next. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button. We never own property in the United States. Yeah, Dan, you're exactly right. That's really tragic because I'm pretty sure it's laid out like that's like one of the major, like that's what it was founded on, this country. Freedom, not living under a king, and having your own property. So the fact that, you've got this country that will boot you off of your land, even if you've owned your home for 39 years. Okay, you paid your mortgage. You've been living there for 39 years. If you stopped paying your property taxes there, Bob, they would boot you off of your property. If I was not paying the $2,000 to the school, my taxes would be around $750. Oh, wow. Okay. Wouldn't mind paying that as long as it goes to, fire, police, library, water district. Yeah. Your property taxes are so high in the state of Illinois because it's all going to the schools. Now, I don't know where you live exactly, Bob, but in McLean County, we pay some of the highest property taxes in the state. It's higher than the statewide average. And unfortunately, our school districts in McLean County are not doing very well. Most school districts in Illinois are not doing very well. I'd have to pull the numbers on it, but there's several school districts that are definitely more rural and do better than, say, Unit 5 or District 87. And by do better, I mean the testing. So the kids are not reading at grade level. Tests show that they're not doing math at grade level, those things that they can't read and do math at grade level. And that is it would make me not want to pay the school. Okay. If you are getting piss poor results out of the school, right, then why would I want to pay my property tax bill, which is super, super high, not paying the $2,000 to the school? Oh, so your property tax bill is like $2,750. Now, if you weren't paying the $2,000, $750 would go to, fire, police, water, district. Yeah. So you calculated this. That's awesome. I recommend everybody do this so that way you might not even have kids in the district anymore. And you're paying $2,000 for the school district that you don't even really use. Now, of course, property taxes, I think, are the best way to pay for the schools in that, you've got this user benefit. So for example, sales tax, non-residents, they can come in and then they can purchase things here in McLean County, and they'll be paying for the schools. So your tourists and non-residents will be paying for the schools, which is just like they're not benefiting at all from the schools. Now, property taxes, and really property taxes exist for the schools. So at the end of the day, what we need to do is, defund our schools, and maybe raise the local sales taxes if we're still going to do public schooling. I think that we should get rid of that as well. If we're getting rid of property taxes, it makes sense just privatize them all and make them compete, right, for your kids. Make them compete, and the best one will be the district in the area. And if you think about this, they're paying, what is it? I don't even know what it's at. 22,000, I think, is the average for per pupil here in the state of Illinois. So your tax dollars, it all goes into a big kitty, and then they dole that out per student. So each student, via your tax dollars, they're getting about 22,000 per student. Okay, so if you look at private schooling, I know of a private school, White Horse Academy. I'm going to be honest with you. White Horse Academy, they're charging tuition for $4,000. So just imagine if you didn't have to pay the $2,000. Say you had a kid, Bob, who was going to the school. you're paying $2,000 in property taxes. Imagine if that $2,000 was back in your profit or back in your pocket, at $4,000 a year. Now I'd imagine your property tax is $2,000 a year, $2,750 a year. Imagine if that $2,750 was back in your pocket. You could put that towards the tuition. $4,000. This is just one private school a year. And you're going to get a way better education. So for a couple of $1,000s more, your kid's going to be able to read, and you're going to have that money back in your pocket to use towards something like a tuition. Homeschooling is even cheaper than private school. Okay, so homeschooling, I think it's like $500 a year or something like that, to homeschool your kid. So that money's back in your pocket. You could put the $2,000 towards homeschooling your child. So with the curriculum and purchasing the curriculum, at the end of the day, I think that you need to privatize education. And may the best school win, right? Try to earn people's money, and school choice. Hey, I'm going to take my kid to this school because it's the best, and I'm going to pay this tuition because they've got the results. You wouldn't pay your plumber if your plumber came in and did a crappy job. No pun intended. But if he came in and didn't do the job, you wouldn't pay the plumber, right? So why do we have to pay the schools if they're not doing their job? Because you're forced to. Otherwise, they're going to boot you off of your property and take your home away from you that you've lived in 39 years. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So I do appreciate you tuning in. We've got so much to get to today. I do appreciate you being on the stream. You can always find me YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, and subscribe to the channel. If you are a business owner and you want advertising, you want to sponsor the show, email me. It's real easy. Cat, C-A-T, that's the animal, cat at gpmbloomington.com. I can help you out with an ad schedule, and you can even sponsor the show. We need your help, either subscribing to the show or sponsoring the show. So give me a text, 309-451-9299, or you could even email me and I can get you on a cheap sponsorship. How's that? All right, so let's get to the illegal aliens. Okay, it's unclear if informing illegal aliens to how to impede law enforcement, how to avoid law enforcement from finding them is worthy of prosecution. But Tom Homan claims that AOC is about to find out. Okay, so if you are telling an illegal alien, now FBI officials, there is some FBI officials who are currently under investigation. Tom Homan has launched an investigation. Kristi Noem is working on that investigation as well. There are certain FBI officials who have tipped off illegal immigrants. These are people who enter through an illegal port of entry. I don't know how many times I've got to say it, but we are very, very good to our foreigners. Okay, we're very good to foreigners and to immigrants of this country in that we have multiple avenues for you to utilize, whether that's a green card, naturalization, work visa, student visa, H-1Bs, asylum, okay, having an asylum claim. We're not talking about all of that. We're talking about somebody who doesn't go through those avenues, likely because they won't pass a background check. They're likely a terrorist. So when people say, oh, illegal immigrants, a lot of them are good people. Probably not. Okay, there's a reason why they didn't go through the proper avenues and the legal avenues. It's because they can't pass a background check, which is why they, via a jet ski, come through the illegal port of entry, or a boat. They take a boat through, San Diego or something like that. They'll ride a jet ski, abandon the jet ski, and swim into the United States. Okay, so they've got something to hide. That's why that they don't go through the legal ports of entry. Now, Tom Homan, he's claimed that AOC is about to find out if it's illegal to let immigrants know how to avoid prosecution and how to avoid deportation. Here's Tom Homan on Fox News. Take a listen.
Anymore. But Tom, you got AOC out there, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman, putting out a webinar doing a webinar to help illegals avoid, I guess, apprehension, giving tips about how to continue to remain in the country and ultimately game the system.
And I sent an email today to the Deputy Attorney General. At what level is that impediment? Is that impediment? I'm not an attorney. I'm not a prosecutor. Is that impediment? Is that impeding our law enforcement efforts? If so, what are we going to do about it? Is she crossing the line? So I'm working with the Department of Justice and finding out where is that line that they cross. So maybe AOC is going to be in trouble now, but I need the AOG to opine on that. But because there's impediment is impediment, in my opinion. I'm not a prosecutor, but we need some further guidance on that. But again, if we have to take every federal dollar out of the city, we'll do it. I mean, we're done. This is anymore.
Wow. I love it. He goes, look, is that impediment? Are you impeding, or are you, by informing illegals how to avoid law enforcement deportation, you're impeding your harboring illegal activity. You're harboring a criminal. Okay, so does AOC not realize she took an oath, by the way, to represent the American people and not foreign nationals? Okay, so to come out with this webinar, I mean, she's representing foreign nationals. Okay, somebody in the chat, they said treason. The betrayal of allegiance, it's a noun, it's the betrayal of allegiance towards one's own country, especially by committing hostile acts against it or aiding its enemies in committing such acts. Yes, so committing a crime, you're aiding our enemies who are committing crimes against this country. Bye-bye, AOC, it's treason. Yeah, thank you for the comment. You can always comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. It's not just even that she refuses to represent the interest of Americans that bothers me so much, but she chooses to go against that solely for people, go against that, representing the American people solely for people who have broken federal immigration laws. Okay, these are not your immigrants. Okay, these are not people who did an asylum claim. These are not people who are trying to get into this country legally. These are people who broke federal immigration laws. Now, she responded to Tom Homan and, did the most mature thing she could think of, going on social media and mocking Tom Homan. Okay, according to The Hill, AOC mocked Tom Homan in a post on a social media platform called Blue Sky. I know it's very irrelevant, probably only got a few views. Okay, it's Blue Sky, come on. So it's kind of irrelevant, but it's unclear what she means by recommending he pick up our founding documents. Okay, so she said, quote, on Blue Sky, maybe he can learn to read. The Constitution would be a great place to start. Now, I don't know what she's talking about here because the Constitution, nowhere does it say, the last time I've read it, right, the Constitution, nowhere does it say that it's proper or that it's allowed for a congresswoman to impede law enforcement for the interest of criminal aliens. I don't know. I think I missed that on my Constitution test in 8th grade. I don't remember it saying that. I'll have to read through it a few more times. But AOC isn't exactly what you would call smart. So here she is on Blue Sky, screaming about Tom Homan and mocking him. She did the mature adult thing, which was mocking Tom Homan on social media. Here we go.
Principle number one in what you can do is that when one of these things comes to your backyard, you can resist.
Mm-hmm.
And what that happens over millions of people is that you generate enough friction that they cannot go as fast as they want to go, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples that have already been working. Let's start with immigration and ICE. When people say, what can we do? In my community, we are a heavily immigrant community. ICE raids deeply affect and disrupt our community. So, number one, if you live in a community with a lot of immigrants, know your rights. That's one tangible thing you can do that I want you to do. And that means know your rights if you are a US citizen as well. Okay? Here's one way that we're going to create some friction in this system. Tom Homan, who's directing a lot of these ICE operations nationally, etc., he went on TV practically crying. This dude was whining his ass off because ICE went into the city of Chicago, and Chicago had prepared for them. Community organizers, activists, and their mayor and local elected officials who were solid on this issue, they educated the city on their legal rights. Because what ICE tries to do is that they rely on people not knowing their rights in order to enter buildings, in order to search workplaces, etc. So when you know your rights, you are able to tell them no, and they do walk away. What you can do is protect people around you and also make sure that you are slowing down this system. The slower they operate, the less they can break.
All right. So, number one, totally disingenuous the whole time she was referring to illegal immigrants as immigrants. Okay. They're completely different things. As I said, we are one of the most generous nations in all of the world when it comes to immigration. We have so many different, I've named, a few of them. There's probably hundreds of different ways to become at least a temporary citizen. Okay. And have legal status. These individuals who go through the illegal port of entry, they do this because they can't go through those avenues. Why? Because they are likely terrorist criminals who cannot pass the background checks necessary to get in through the illegal port of entry and to get in. So they purposefully go through the illegal port of entry. There's a reason why they don't go through the legal avenue, okay? And what a dumb thing to say. If you live in a community, this is what she says, if you live in a community with lots of immigrants, know your rights. Since she's referring to illegal immigrants, she's referring to the illegal aliens resisting ICE. It's unclear what right she's referring to, as the Constitution does not afford foreign nationals privilege to break federal immigration laws, okay? There's a very clear definition. You have to be naturalized, born, and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. There's 2 criteria to become a citizen. The Constitution does not afford non-citizens, foreign nationals, whatever you call them, illegal immigrants, the privilege to break federal immigration laws. Okay, so according to AOC, as long as you know your rights, you will be safe from deportation. However, according to Homan, that couldn't be further from the truth. Okay, this whole know your rights, you have to have a warrant to come in and into my business to deport this Venezuelan migrant who, is a known drug trafficker or a known human trafficker, right? You have to have a warrant or whatever to come into my business. No. That is not, if you are here illegally, also on top of that, you've committed criminal activity on top of entering through an illegal port of entry, you will be deported, okay, according to Tom Homan. So unfortunately for her, yes, it is a fact. Some humans are illegal. Okay, so I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. My favorite story today, liberal women, they are according to this unsurprising, unshocking, not very shocking poll, this new poll, liberal women are completely dissatisfied with their lives. They are unsatisfied with their lives. They're lonely and unhappy. This is according to the 2024 American Family Survey. I'm going to be right back listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. I so do appreciate you tuning in. A ninth grader. Oh, come on. Give me a break. What? You've got a problem with me saying that it's wrong for somebody to enter this country through an illegal port of entry? Like, give me a break. You know what I mean? You're abetting illegal persons, illegal activity. It's an illegal port of entry. I can't even name all of the ways that you can come to this country legally. H-1Bs, which I'm not even really for. We really need to do a deep evaluation of how our, legal avenues, we need to do an evaluation on those, because I think that there's flaws even with the H-1B system because it's been weaponized. That H-1B system is supposed to be for individuals that are like the top 1-2% in the field or work field. So for example, say you're a surgeon and you need somebody from a foreign country and you can't do this surgery and you need to outsource it to the rest of the world. Okay. So we're looking at, your experts, the top 1% in the field. Okay. That's what H-1B was originally for. Unfortunately, now Uber drivers, engineers, these are jobs that Americans would like to have but can't because a lot of H-1Bs, visas, they're coming in here, they're using cheap labor, forcing migrant labor to work for cheap, and they're going to pay the guy on the H-1B less money than, the American who applies for the job. That whole system needs to be evaluated. We have it. You even if you want to be an Uber driver in the United States or an engineer, whatever, if you want to be work here in the country, you can get an H-1B. Largely, it's for Indian applicants of the H-1B. I think it's like 66% of H-1B applicants are Indian. So it's a system that's been abused. We as a country should be evaluating our legal ports of entry, or like how people get into the country legally. And we should evaluate those because some of those need to be nixed. Okay, the H-1B system has been weaponized. I think that would be a nice one to nix and to get out of here. The green card, it's kind of hard now I've talked about the Trust Act here in the state of Illinois. The green card one is kind of hard to police, I guess. Now the Trust Act, they'll try to say that it's a blanket, the Trust Act makes it to where local law enforcement can't work with federal immigration authorities. That's not true at all. When it comes to checking to see if somebody's green card, I think green card, if you're married to somebody here in the United States and you've been married to this person for a long time, checking to see if the validity of that marriage, that is what federal immigration authorities are tasked with. Okay, they have to check in with people's work visas. Hey, are you still working here? Did you get fired? You know what I mean? To check the status because, hey, you have to work here at, say Rivian, and you're here on a work visa, an H-1B maybe. And you're here, legally, but there's stipulations with that. You have to work here at this Rivian plant in order to receive your temporary status of being a legal citizen. If you're continuing to work there, then we've got no issues. Now, the federal immigration authorities, they've got to check in with that kind of stuff all the time, okay, to make sure. And this is, a process where once you obtain temporary legal status, are you, meeting all of the criteria to keep that temporary legal status? Okay, so the federal immigration authorities are tasked with the maintenance of those temporary statuses. And the Trust Act here in the state of Illinois prohibits local law enforcement from doing those kinds of jobs, from maintaining and doing the job, really, of federal immigration authorities. So I'm not even really all that against the Trust Act, to be honest with you, because I would hate to see my local tax dollars helping out the feds when the feds should be using my federal tax dollars to do their job. Why are you, taking the resources away from, the locals when you should be doing the job, okay, that we have hired you to do? Now, that probably doesn't happen so much in what they've done here in the state of Illinois. They've said that the Trust Act means blanket, like sweeping, like you don't help federal immigration authorities. But when it comes to the criminal aspect of this, so the deportation of illegal aliens who, on top of coming through the country illegally, committed heinous crimes, by the way, you have an obligation as a local law enforcement officer to aid federal authorities. Okay. because it's criminal. And you take an oath, you swear an oath to the Constitution, right? And part of that Constitution, by the way, is the 14th Amendment, which lays out very clearly what's criminal when it comes to citizenship. There's 2 criteria. If you don't fit those 2 criteria, then I'm sorry, you're illegal. You have to be deported. So unfortunately, people make the Trust Act way more complicated than it needs to be. And they distort it for their narrative and for their agenda, which is unfortunate. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. So I appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. If you want to advertise with me, you can always email me at cat@gpmbloomington.com. You can text me 309-451-9299. You can sponsor the program, get a round of ads going every week, and we'll hook you up. I'll hook you up. cat@gpmbloomington.com. And you can also subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel because that helps us out. Okay, so new poll from the 2024 American Family Survey. I want to get to this. And here's the problem with this victim mentality. I talk about this all of the time. You try to out-victim everybody else around you when you have this leftist ideology. Like, how many ailments can I have? How oppressed can I be? Okay, when you have this victim mentality and you see yourself as a victim, even due to insignificant birth traits like you're black, you're white, you're a woman, you're a man, right? All of these insignificant birth traits, or even your sexual orientation, when you see yourself as a victim, you tend not to be happy. Okay, when you're constantly seeing yourself as a victim due to things that you can't control. Okay, like your gender and your race. Okay, this is why it shouldn't come as a shock to you that liberals are far more unhappy, specifically liberal women. They are lonely and unhappy. So this is a poll. 12% of liberal women reported being completely satisfied with their lives. That's really sad. So only 12% of these women polled said that they were satisfied with their lives. According to the New York Post, the 2024 American Family Survey reportedly found that 37% of conservative women and 28% of moderate women between the ages of 18 to 40 reported being completely satisfied with their lives. And just 12% of liberal women in the same age group said the same. So compare it to liberal conservative, 37% of conservative women said that they're satisfied with their life. 12% of liberal women said that they were satisfied or completely satisfied with their life. So liberal women were also nearly 3 times more likely than conservative women to say that they experience loneliness. Okay, so loneliness is not good. In fact, I think I read something where like a pack of cigarettes a day and like experiencing loneliness, it has like the same effect almost. So on your physical health. Okay, so cigarettes we know are bad for you. If you smoke a pack a day, probably not going to feel very great at all physically. The same thing with loneliness. So if you experience loneliness at least a few times a week, right? So conservative women say that they've experienced loneliness, but liberal women were 3 times more likely to experience loneliness at least a few times during that week. So that has a detriment to your physical health, and that's been proven. Now, these are the same people, it shouldn't shock you, that they believe that there is this invisible patriarchy tearing them down, while they also bash masculinity. Okay, liberal women bash masculinity, and they say it's toxic. So, of course, they're going to be lonely. Okay, they think that there's this invisible patriarchy. They hate men. Why would a man choose to be with you and spend time with you if you despise them? Okay, so of course you're going to be lonely. Half of the population is not going to want to spend time with you. Now, Brad Wilcox, he's a sociology professor at the University of Virginia and a fellow at the Institute for Family Studies, who analyzed the survey's data, by the way. And he believes that there's a couple of reasons why couple of reasons why conservative young women are more likely to be happier than their liberal counterparts. So this is 18 to 40, these ages. We've seen research that conservative women tend to be more likely to embrace a sense of agency and have a sense that they are not in any way a victim of a larger structural realities or forces. So they don't have this victim mentality, okay? The reason that conservative women tend not to believe that they are a victim of larger structural realities or forces is because they're not, okay? So the reason why conservative women don't believe that is because that's reality. You are not a victim just because you are a woman. You're not a victim because you're Black. That is not, it's just a false victim utopia. And these leftists tend to live in it, and they can't even really describe or name the system tearing them down. They can't even really describe it. So of course you're going to hate your life and be lonely because you're suffering as a victim, and you don't even really know why, because you can't even describe what's tearing you down. This larger structural reality or this structural force is tearing you down. You can't even really describe it. The patriarchy is tearing you down. So, Will Cox, he said this, quote, "They're also less likely to catastrophize about public events and concerns, and are more likely to think of themselves as captains of their own fate." Okay, so individualistic. So conservatives, we don't believe that humanity will cease to exist if the government doesn't figure out a way to control the direction of the wind. Okay, and we're satisfied with our lives in that we're not freaking out every 5 minutes that the earth is going to be caught on fire. I take great comfort knowing that the Bible says that, hey, this earth will pass away. My word is forever, but this earth will pass away. So I'm not shocked when, you see the changes in the climate. I'm not shocked by, even like climate change. Let's say climate change isn't the way they talk about it, it's a hoax, but for the sake of argument here, let's say climate change is a real thing and, weather patterns are increasing and the changes in weather are increasing and we're seeing this, trend. I take great comfort in that because God said that would happen. Okay, so conservatives, they tend not to live by a narrative that humanity will cease to exist if the government doesn't tax you to death to find out if they can change the direction of the wind. And, you can't think that your very existence is a cancer in the world and then be happy. Okay, so it's very anti-human. The climate change, liberal women, they probably believe in depopulation, things like that. And it's not possible to be happy, and it's not possible to have people in your life when you have this anti-human stance. Okay, so I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. All right, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Sorry, Tango. I'm just kind of used to people coming after me. I was like, wait a second, talking about AOC. She's a 9th grader speaking. Yeah, I didn't really understand a whole lot of what she said there. I got a little bit of it, that she was upset that Tom Homan was whining his ass off, is what she had said about Tom Homan when he said, hey, I'm going to send the DOJ to investigate AOC because she's got this webinar here where she's telling illegal aliens how to avoid deportation. So, yeah, I couldn't really understand. We'll play it one more time, actually. Here we go. This is AOC. I'm going to try my best to understand what she's saying, but it's kind of hard because it's like she's a 9th grader.
Principle number 1 in what you can do is that when one of these things comes to your backyard, you can resist. And what that happens over millions of people is that you generate enough friction that they cannot go as fast as they want to go, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples that have already been working. Let's start with immigration and ICE. When people say, what can we do? In my community, we are a heavily immigrant community. ICE raids deeply affect and disrupt our community. So, number one, if you live in a community with a lot of immigrants, know your rights. That's one tangible thing you can do.
Okay, so here, if I was a leftist and I was trying to argue this point of, you don't have to work with federal immigration authorities. If I was a leftist, I would be pulling, examples of state law where, for example, Illinois, they have the Trust Act. Okay, now people have wrongfully interpreted the Trust Act. So this argument doesn't work, but I would say, hey, well, if I was a leftist, I'd say, hey, well, the Trust Act says locally that I don't have to work with federal immigration authorities. And you could cite that law and say that that's how you stop federal immigration authorities from coming into your places of business and conducting raids. Okay, so you could, use that and know your rights, know the law, right? I would use that as an example, but she doesn't do that here. She just broadly says if you live in an immigrant community, which is disingenuous. When she says immigrant community, she really means illegals. So if you live in an area where there's prevalent illegal immigration activity or illegal activity, that's totally disingenuous of her, but she says know your rights. So there's really not an example where she lays out like what those rights are and what the law is in these sanctuary cities. Okay, and she could have done a much better job arguing her point here, but she didn't. Yes, AOC is probably amongst those liberal women who are lonely and unhappy and not satisfied with their life. We've been talking about AOC this morning a little bit. She, got out there and she was screaming about Tom Homan because Tom Homan said, hey, AOC, she might be subject here to an investigation because she created like a webinar for illegal immigrants and was trying to teach them how to avoid deportation. And really, that's aiding and abetting criminals. It's treason. It's the betrayal of your country. And he says, look, I'm going to launch an investigation against AOC. The DOJ is going to look into whether or not she's impeding law enforcement. So before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about liberal women. There was this new poll that came out that found that they were unhappy and lonely. Wow, I'm so shocked. Not really. When you think your entire existence is a cancer to the world, of course you're not going to be happy. Of course you're going to be lonely. The Democrat liberal ideology, very much anti-human. Okay, so according to the Washington Times, 62% of whites who classify themselves as very liberal or liberal have been told by a doctor that they have a mental health condition. Oh, as compared to 26% of conservatives and 20% of moderates, the study found that they have a mental health condition. So in other words, leftism is a mental health condition. Okay, so when you're constantly thinking you're the victim and you're the victim of this invisible force, the patriarchy, of course you're going to be unhappy, depressed even, when you think that your existence is the reason why the planet is going to combust. Okay, of course you're going to be lonely and you're not going to be very happy. So how can you be happy when you think the world is going to end if the government doesn't tax your very existence to find out, how to control the direction of the wind? How can you be satisfied in your life if you believe that half the population is toxic or dictators or fascist, whatever? You are not going to be very happy in your life, and the overall mental health of these people, it gets worse the more liberal they become. Okay, so the overall mental being of people suffers the more. So your well-being is compromised even more when you have more and more liberal views. This is not a coincidence. Everything about their ideology is rooted in this anti-human sentiment. Think about it: abortion, killing babies. climate change, trying to depop war, have less humans to emit carbon carbon gases. Okay, meat. They're anti-meat because I guess cows fart and the methane, right, causes gases in the atmosphere, and they don't want you to eat meat, which will kill you. Okay, protein. If you don't have protein, if you don't have the proper nutrition, it's anti-human. Everything that they believe is anti-human. So it shouldn't shock us when we find out liberal women are unhappy. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. They're so happy that they stared. That was a Michigan state representative. She sterilized herself to punish Trump as a form of protest. She sterilized herself, which is just like, what? Are you insane? Yeah. So this is the party that is very anti-human. And this ideology is rooted in this anti-human sentiment, and it's sad. It's sad to see. I really don't want liberals to be unhappy. It's unfortunate that they are mentally ill and unhappy, but it shouldn't shock us because that's just the way the ideology is. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about this new leftist protest that happened over President's Day. Now, this is how I know, you just like regurgitate everything that the media tells you, because they're protesting and they're saying like no King's Day. So they're calling it King's Day. Now, I am going to get to this woman. She's a historian, and I think she was like on MSNBC or something, and she was claiming that President's Day, which was yesterday, shouldn't be celebrated because Trump is terrible. But she also said that, it's rooted in this, what do you call it? It's like a tradition that we used to have where we would celebrate the birthdays of kings. And that President's Day is reflective of that, where we celebrate the birthdays of presidents. Which I don't know when George Washington's birthday is. President's Day was like about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. So let me look up Abraham Lincoln. Now, if you really, I wonder what these leftists would say about Abraham Lincoln. We're considered the state of Abraham Lincoln. Like on all of our license plates, we have Abraham Lincoln. We're known as the land of Lincoln. Okay. So I wonder what leftists would say about the entire state of Illinois. Really paying tribute to a king, right? Abraham Lincoln. But President's Day, okay, it surrounds. So Abraham Lincoln's birthday was February 12th, and then George Washington's birthday. That's what President's Day is about. So February 22nd. So it's kind of smack dab in the middle of Abraham Lincoln's birthday and George Washington's birthday, which, I mean, come on. George Washington, he founded the country, was like part of the American Revolution, right? I think that, celebrating the works that he did, huge. Yeah, I mean, come on. This is our country we're talking about, and he was our very first president. So his birthday was February 22nd. You had Abraham Lincoln's, which I believe was, what did I say, February 15th. So it's kind of like smack dab in the middle of both their birthdays. And that's why we celebrate President's Day. It's to celebrate two very specific presidents, by the way. George Washington, at least that's the origin of the holiday. Now, President's Day, the way it's named, a lot of people, recognize, I guess you want to say celebrate the accomplishments of presidents and what they've done. And now they're saying like it's no King's Day, like we shouldn't be celebrating the birthdays of kings. And it's George Washington, Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and that was like an old tradition, in England where you would celebrate the birthday of the king. They're not kings, and we're not celebrating it on either birthday. We're celebrating it in between both of their birthdays, but President's Day, observing. I don't even really, because does anybody really have a celebration of President's Day? I mean, we observe the holiday. Some people are off work. By some people, I mean most people are not off work on President's Day, right? But you know, what's so wrong with recognizing the accomplishments of presidents on President's Day? There's nothing wrong with that. And they're trying to say that it's like a fascist holiday and that we're celebrating kings. No, the only reason why the leftists are upset about it is because people were recognizing Trump's accomplishments on this day, considering he's the current president. Okay. So people were saying, like, Happy President's Day to President Donald Trump, and nobody really liked that. So we're going to talk about these naive leftists. They spent the entire President's Day by protesting in Washington, D.C. They were promoting a message called No King's Day. This is not a King's Day. This is recognizing and acknowledging the accomplishments of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, okay? Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and Talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. If you're a business owner and you want to sponsor the show, you can contact me at catcat@gpmbloomington.com. You can also text me 309-451-9299. Now, before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about President's Day. Now, that was yesterday. President's Day, there's been a bunch of like protests, I guess, across the nation by this group, and I'm going to get to them here in just a second, but they're naive leftists, and they were protesting in Washington, D.C. I've got this clip. Cringe warning. Cringe warning. If leftists make you itch, this is going to make you just crawl out of your skin. It is so cringy, this video. But these naive leftist protesters, they were in Washington, D.C., and they were fighting to promote No King's Day. Okay, so it's unclear why these people believe, anyone with half of a brain would not listen to these people. Okay, one protester decided that he thought he had a good chance at convincing the masses if he sang. So if he sang what he was thinking about this No King's Day, I'm going to get to, President's Day, why we acknowledge President's Day. I don't know anybody who really celebrates President's Day. We acknowledge, we observe President's Day. Nobody goes out and buys a cake for, President Donald Trump or George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, which the reason why we observe, I don't even really know. We observe, some people might have the day off. Okay. Largely government actors have the day off. Okay. By the way, teachers and they have the day off. Most people work on President's Day, but in Washington, D.C., they were screaming, No King's Day, No King's Day. The reason why we celebrate or observe, I want to be careful with my words here because nobody really celebrates President's Day. We observe it. It's to acknowledge the accomplishments of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln very specifically. I wonder what leftists say. You got Governor J.B. Pritzker out there always talking about Abraham Lincoln. We're considered the land of Lincoln, the state of Illinois. This is the entire state is practically a shrine to Abraham Lincoln. Okay, we've got him on our license plates, for God's sakes. So, I wonder what these naive protesters would say about that. They should be protesting the entire state of Illinois and our observance of the accomplishments of the president, Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves, right? Republican president, by the way, who freed the slaves from Democrat states who thought that they had the ability to define citizenship, and that's why the 14th Amendment was actually crafted. But I want to get to this guy. He thought that he was going to be able to convince people to not observe King's Day, as he calls it, President's Day, if he sang about it and if he sang about his thoughts. Like I said, cringe warning. This is very cringy. So if leftists make you crawl a little bit, this is going to make you want to crawl on your skin. Take a listen. Here we go.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Trump is not a king. Trump is not a king. Trump is not a king. Never turning back. Never turning back. Stop the fascists now. Stop the fascists now. Stop the fascists now. Never turning back. Never turning back.
All right, it goes on. I don't know what it is. It's these lefties. They're theater kids, and this is being somebody who was in show choir. I did band, all that. What's unfortunate about leftists, they're like theater kids who never grew up and like realized, hey, there's more to life than singing. Okay, so this is like your average leftist. They like love singing, they love theater, and they were bullied in high school, and they never grew up. And now they just sing about their feelings all of the time, which, I mean, a straight up cartoon character, this guy. So that was terrible, very cringy. It's almost comical how they pretend that they will keep moving forward, as this is, not what people voted for, by the way. We're moving forward in that people voted for Donald Trump, by the way. So nonetheless, it's unclear what they mean by turning back, as I thought they were protesting federal job cuts. Anyone with half a brain would realize that a wannabe king would want more workers. Okay, so kings typically, at least this is how history and real life have always played out, they want more government, more workers, and these people don't really think so much before they jump on this deranged narrative that they find on social media. So, this is a No Kings Day. This is a group, and I guess they were trying to protest federal workforce firings. That's why they came out here. They were protesting, Donald Trump, and apparently he wants to be a king simply because he wants to limit federal jobs and the federal workforce. Save you money and make the government more efficient. Okay. Apparently that makes him a king, which is kind of weird because throughout all of human history, kings tend to hire more workers. Okay. They need more workers in the government. So according to Fox 5, the nation could learn of more federal workforce firings as early as Monday. So yesterday we did learn that there were some more federal workforce firings. But one group is fighting back with nationwide protests. So this is a group, this guy who's singing, they're part of a group. It's called 5051. So 50501. This is the 50501 movement, and they planned, quote, a No Kings Day protest across the country on the federal holiday President's Day. So the 50501 movement is named because they had 50 protests in 50 states, and they were planning demonstrations at the Capitol reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. and other major cities nationwide. The group's flyer declares its mission is to unite against fascism and tyranny, condemning the anti-democratic illegal moves by the Trump administration to slash the federal workforce. It's not illegal. It's not anti-democratic. In fact, I think an Obama judge was taken to court, and an Obama judge even said, like, hey, he can do this. He can eliminate some of the federal workforce, okay, slash the federal workforce and make it more efficient. So I think it's ironic. You've got fascists fascists actually love big government. Like I said, most kings throughout history, what they did is they hired more workers, okay? The gestures and things like that. You guys remember the kings, and they'll hire somebody to actually make them laugh, okay? The jester. They would hire people to entertain them. Okay, that's what kings did. They hired a lot of government workers, and they bloated the government. And it's big government. Fascism loves big government, and that's the only way fascists can engage in authoritarian rule. By the way, so while they believe making government more efficient is evil, that's actually not what history and reality shows us. History and reality shows us that the bigger the government gets, the more they can operate under authoritarian rule, fascist kings. Okay, so Also, the normalization of left-wing violence will not stop with Trump and Elon. This is a video, full disclosure, I'm going to play it on the stream. You guys can watch it there. It's very, very disturbing. They've got Elon Musk hung by a noose, and they're dragging Elon Musk around by this noose. And he's got like a bloody head or whatever. And, you know, this is just typical leftist violence. So you guys can watch it on the stream, but it's this guy, and he's dragging Elon Musk on the ground like a depiction of Elon Musk, right? So this like body, or like this dummy, and it looks like Elon Musk, and he's dragging it around on the ground, and it's, you know, he's dragging him by a noose. Okay, so this is leftist violence being, and at this point, these people don't even really know what they're protesting. Like I said, kings, they typically, throughout history, have always grown the government. So if they were protesting the firings, the federal workforce firings, because of fascism, they'd be wrong, because reality and history shows us, you know, the opposite is true. And, you know, the media despises government efficiency, because the media is getting paid by the government. Politico, NPR, all of your mainstream outlets, a lot of them are getting paid by the government, which is why they're against government efficiency, because that means they're not going to get paid anymore. Okay, so they've jumped on this bandwagon with the media. These people, this 50-51, whatever it's called, this movement, they've jumped on the media's bandwagon. So they don't really even know what they're protesting. They're just protesting because the media is protesting the government efficiency, because they're not getting paid anymore. So it makes sense why the media is against it, but these people probably don't even know why they're against it. Nonetheless, it was very pathetic, and it couldn't have been more pathetic if they had tried. They definitely are going to probably try again here with the protest 50-51. I don't understand this movement at all. But like I said, President's Day, you know, and we're going to get to this because this woman on MSNBC, she's a historian. She says that, a liberal historian, she says that President's Day is celebrated like we used to celebrate kings, and that we celebrate on the birthdays of these presidents. Now, President's Day, it's all really about George Washington. So the president who, the first president, critical figure in this nation's founding. We should definitely recognize the accomplishments he had. Okay. If you're an American, you recognize and you applaud the accomplishments of George Washington. I don't think that's very controversial. And Abe Lincoln, who freed the black slaves. Okay. So, you know, leftists, they claim that they're all for the Constitution, and that they love the Constitution. You know, earlier I talked about how AOC told Tom Homan to pick up the Constitution and read it. She claims to be a constitutionalist. George Washington would definitely be somebody that they would want to acknowledge, right? For his accomplishments. George Washington, founding fathers, right? I mean, come on. I mean, why would you not want to acknowledge the accomplishments of George Washington? Number two, Abe Lincoln. I mean, we acknowledge the accomplishments of Abe Lincoln every day. I mean, the state of Illinois is practically a shrine to the guy, okay? There's an Abraham Lincoln Museum I've gone to. It's in Springfield. Our license plates have Abraham Lincoln on it. So it's basically a shrine, the entire state of Illinois, to Abraham Lincoln. And why wouldn't we want to acknowledge the accomplishments of Abe Lincoln? He freed the black slaves. Okay, so their birthdays both fall somewhere in February. So I think George Washington, February 22nd, Abe Lincoln, February 15th. So President's Day is smack dab in the middle of both their birthdays. Okay, so we acknowledge both those presidents on President's Day. That's the origin of the holiday. Now, it's become, because of the name President's Day, a time to acknowledge other presidents' accomplishments. Which I don't think is a bad thing, to observe a holiday where we acknowledge the success of our leaders in this country. I don't think that that's a terrible thing. And, you know, I'm going to get to the liberal historian here in just a little bit. I've got to come back. We're going to talk about Germany, because they are going back to their fascism style speech enforcement, by the way. They're kind of going back to their past with that, and the left. would like you to think that America is the problem. Okay, but really it's Germany, it's Europe. We talked yesterday at length about how J.D. Vance called out the entire continent of Europe for their anti-speech laws, their anti-free speech laws. So we're going to get to that. I'm going to get to AP. They're refusing to update their style book. There's just so much I got to get to. So we will get to the liberal historian. She was on MSNBC saying that we shouldn't celebrate or observe President's Day anymore because it's like rooted in like fascism, and the people would celebrate the king's birthdays. By decree, you had to celebrate the king's birthdays, and we should do away with that tradition. We're not celebrating the birthdays of these presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. We are simply acknowledging their accomplishments, which were great, okay, on President's Day. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Okay, number one, the leftist noose at the Capitol. Here's the controversy surrounding the noose at the Capitol on January 6th. Okay, it didn't have a body attached to it, number one, and had somebody pulling it around, like in, for example, that video where he was pulling around a bloody Elon Musk. Okay, nobody was depicted as dying on this noose at Jan 6. This was like a crappy 2x4 and a string hanging from the 2x4. Okay, number one. At January 6th, and no figure was attached to it. Nobody was depicted as hanging on it. Okay, number one. Number two, the controversy around the noose at the Capitol, people said that they were going to do hangings. Okay, so the leftist media said that they were actually going to hang people from that noose. Okay, there was no way. It was symbolic treason. People believed that the government was committing treason. I'm not saying that I would not hang out with the person who brought the noose because it's kind of silly, but it was symbolic, saying that, you should hang for the crime of treason. Okay, that's what we used to do with people who committed the act of treason. Okay, now this was symbolism, complete symbolism, because the noose was not in any way operational. Okay, this was a 2x4 with a string. Nobody, if you would have put somebody up on that noose, that would not have even worked at all. It would have snapped, the string would have snapped. I mean, it's comparable to dental floss, okay, what they had at Jan 6. It was a symbol. Somebody had put it out there as a symbol. So we're going to be right back. Smash that like button and share this out with your friends. What's new, Cat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk, Bloomington Normal. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, Rick Johnson from Tax and Accounting Plus. He's the guy who lives, breathes, eats taxes. And he's got our Tax Tip Tuesday, which happens 7:30 every Tuesday during tax season. Okay, so before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about how, J.D. Vance, we remember J.D. Vance, he had made a speech about how the entire continent of Europe is anti-free speech. They have implemented anti-free speech laws, and that's wrong. Now, you do know that the AP, they have refused to update their style book. Now, being somebody who went to journalism or has a journalism degree, went to Illinois State University for journalism, I know what the style book is. I was referred to, which is just so disgusting. My professors called it the Bible. Okay. So they say that the AP style book is the Bible, and they refuse to change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America in the AP style book. Now, in the AP style book, there's several things in there. For example, if you're a journalist, you have to refer to third world countries as, quote, developing nations. Okay. So this is why you see news articles use leftist language, because all of the journalists are using the AP style book. And when you're in journalism school, you have to study this style book and you have to write according to the style book. So you can't say the word third world countries or third world nations. You have to say developing nations. So it's totally criminal. They live in a progressive la-la land. They choose to live in progressive la-la land and use progressive language and force you to use progressive language and other journalists to use progressive language. And what the White House has decided is that, hey, you're no longer going to have a seat at the press briefings. Now, I'm not too sure. I know that they were booted out of the Oval Office press briefings, which is an added bonus to the press briefings, the White House press briefings. Now there's talk about taking away AP's seat in the press briefings as well. Number one, you are not entitled to a White House press briefing. There are limited seats in the White House press room, okay? And you have to get press credentials because it's limited seating, okay? So those are a privilege to go to a White House press briefing. Now, if they were denying AP access to the sidewalks in Washington, D.C., or outside the Capitol, or access to the Capitol, or access to, congressmen and women, then that would be a violation of free speech because those are public spaces. The White House press briefing room, limited seating, and they've always had credentials. So it is a privilege to go and ask questions of the White House press secretary. Okay. So it's not against free speech. Okay. Now, this British American journalist, Mehdi Hasan is his name. He believes that the real threat to free speech is happening here in this country, in America, and he attempted to call out J.D. Vance for his non-existent hypocrisy, okay? Vance responded, calling out his pathetic attempt to label the Trump administration as anti-free speech overlords. However, so J.D. Vance shut this down very quickly. So here's what this British American journalist, Mehdi Hasan, Medea Hasan, I don't know how to say his name. He says, "Hey, J.D. Vance, I know you're busy lecturing Europeans on free speech, but have you seen this?" And here it talks about President Donald Trump's decision to limit AP's or reporters' access is as much as a fight over the Gulf of America as it is to protest of what the White House advisors say is years of liberal word choices that the AP influential style book has spread across mainstream media. So it's not so much so there, the White House, they have limited AP, the Associated Press access to the president via the Oval Office press briefings and the White House press briefings. They've limited their access, not just because they refuse to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America, and they're refusing to change it in their style book. That's not the whole reason. The whole reason is why is because of their style book, okay, and how in American journalism school, it's referred to by professors as the Bible, okay? So they have manipulated language for decades now. The AP style book, there's like a new edition every single year that they put out, and they've manipulated language, and because of that, the White House has limited their press credentials. Okay, so JD Vance comes out and he says to this this British American journalist, yes, dummy. I think there is a difference between not giving a reporter a seat at the White House press briefing room and jailing people for dissenting views, because that's what's going on in the UK. They jail people for simply praying silently 50 meters away from an abortion clinic. Okay, that happens on a day-to-day basis over there. The latter is a threat to free speech, jailing people for dissent. The former is not. Hope that helps. So that's what he says to this British American reporter who claims that JD Vance is being hypocritical. Okay, we are getting to Rick Johnson from Tax and Accounting Plus. Today is Tax Tip Tuesday. Good morning, Rick Johnson. How are you?
I'm fine, Kat. Good to see you this week. And it's cold outside.
It's so cold. It's very cold. I think it was like -2 when I woke up this morning. And, you couple that with the wind chill. I mean, it's probably like -16, something crazy like that. So glad you're here. Today we are talking about Schedule A, itemized deductions, and the standard deduction. So Rick Johnson from Tax and Accounting Plus, you guys are going to want to check it out, Tax Accounting Plus, taxaccountingplus.com. Rick Johnson, tell us about Schedule A. What is that?
All right. Well, Schedule A is people over the years, whatever, they refer to Schedule A a lot as old school is the long form. They're going to file a long form. And if they don't, they just use a standard deduction, then it's the short form. But those are old adages. But now it's since the TCJA, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, came through back in Trump's first session round with the presidency, it was the largest overhaul in like over 30 years. Okay. So and now that is actually coming to an end. It was scheduled or set to expire at the end of 2025. So I do not know, and nobody really does, what they're going to do, if they're going to continue it, change it. I mean, it's up in the air. And unfortunately, Congress does not have a reputation for getting things done ahead of schedule. They wait till just a little bit before and then decide they need to do something. So we'll have to see what they come up with by the end of 2025. When the Tax Cut and Jobs Act relating to taxes has expired. But back to our standard deduction itemized Schedule A. If you itemize, and I'm explaining what that is, then you can't take the standard deduction. If you take the standard deduction, then you can't itemize. It's one or the other. You don't get to double dip. Okay, so the standard deduction is just an amount that the IRS has set aside to say, hey, you don't have to really prove anything, except, maybe if they would ask if you're married or if you had a household or something like that. But otherwise, they just say, because you are single, you get this much to take off your taxes, or married filing joint or whatever, you get this much. So in 24, if you're single, the standard deduction is $14,600. Now in 25, that's going up to $15,000. Right. If you're married filing joint, the standard deduction is $29,200 in 24 and a whopping $30,000 in 25. Married filing separate is $14,600 and 24 and $15,000 in 25. And lastly, if you're head of household, you can deduct $21,900 in 24 and $22,500 in 25. Plus, there's like a little extra bonus too if you happen to be one of the wonderful individuals in this world that are older, 65 and over 65. For each person that's over 65, you can they call these events. There's like 2 events: over 65 and blind. Okay, if you're considered blind, you get an extra $1,550 in 24 for each person that is over 65 or blind on your return. As far as the couple, if you're a couple, so you could double up if both were. Okay, 1,600. I'm sorry, in 2025, you get if you have one of those events as well. Okay. So that's the standard deduction. Now, if you can come up with more for itemization, then you can take the more. In other words, you're going to do whatever's best for you, right? So now, what happened? There's the changes in the itemized deductions. Were several back when the TCJA came out. One of those is the limit on the amount of standard deductions as far as gross income. Back before this change was, the amount that you could take for your itemization would go down if you met a certain limit on income. Okay, that was taken out. There was no more limitations on income, so you were allowed to take the the full itemized deductions. All right. People need to know that. I think a lot of them think that medical expenses are gone. They're not gone. You just have to subtract 7.5% of your adjusted gross income off of your medical expenses. Anything over that, you can then take that and try to reach up to get more than your standard deduction. State and local income taxes, that's the biggest burr in my backside. I did not like when they did this. State and local income taxes, property taxes, sales tax, they all go in the same little category. And you add those all up. If you have $30,000 in taxes between, off your W-2 and property taxes, things like that, basically too bad. The most you can take is $10,000. Okay. So that I did not care for that. Yeah. So there's a limit on taxes that you can deduct on your Schedule A, and that's 10 grand. Okay?
Even with that act that is expiring at the end of 2025, right?
Right. And so like I said, this could all change after this year, 2025. So,
Okay.
all right. And another item that you can take off or deduct as part of your itemization is mortgage interest. So that's good. People still have mortgage interest, and with the taxes or the prices of interest and such going up, that helps out quite a bit. So I think a lot of people in the last several years have gotten kind of just passive, and they said, okay, I couldn't itemize 2 years ago or whatever, so I'm just not even going to bother. But they should put the numbers down on the paper and try it and see what happens to make sure, because a lot of times they get there.
So itemizing, so I would imagine, say you had a home office, right? You would be able to deduct, your utilities and whatever. A lot of people after COVID, home offices, things like that. So is that part of that itemizing? Like, what do you mean by itemizing? Like, can you give me an example of what you could deduct and itemize?
Okay. Well, in a home office, if you are an employee, okay, that's one of the things I was going to talk about here. As an employee, the TCGA wiped out all expenses related to employees working for an employer. Okay, that was no longer allowed, and those were all suspended. So things such as your meals, entertainment, travel, use of your home for the convenience of your employer, safety deposit fees, investment fees, etc. These things are all gone now. Okay, and will be until we'll see what they do here at the end of 25. Now, if you are self-employed, that's a different story, okay? And that's not part of itemization, all right? That's going to be on your Schedule C, self-employed. But you can, if you have an office and home as a self-employed business person, then you can take those expenses, okay?
Okay. Got it. Okay. I was just wondering. I was like, okay, so you could put it all on paper, see if your itemized exceeds the standard deductions, like they're, whatever number that you listed them all off, whatever number that they come up with, you could see if you could deduct more if you were to, break it all down.
Right. And if you can deduct more, then that means you have less taxable income, which means you pay less tax.
Hey, aren't you the guy who puts it all down on paper so I don't have to? Right.
That is correct. That is correct.
So, how do we find out more about Tax Accounting Plus? Let them put it down on paper, folks. Don't try to do it yourself. I'm just going to be honest with you. You got to trust the experts on this one. You don't want the IRS agents coming into your door and if you screwed up when you put it down on paper, and you accidentally itemized more, you could open yourself to an audit, and they'll come after you, cuff you. So you don't want that to happen. Rick Johnson, Tax and Accounting Plus will do it all for you. So how do we find out more about you?
We can go to our website at taxaccountingplus.com. Give us a call at 309-827-4010 or stop by at the office. We're located at 501 North Clinton here in Bloomington.
And you do have new office hours, correct?
Yes, our office hours now are 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 at night, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 4 on Saturday. And we do take the Lord's Day off on Sunday.
Yes, we do. All right. Well, Rick Johnson from Tax and Accounting Plus, I really do appreciate you tuning in to this week's Tax Tip Tuesday and giving us our tax tips this Tuesday.
All right. Thank you.
Folks, we're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. Go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. We are going to be getting back to JD Vance, responding, of course, to this pathetic British journalist who, says that the real threat to free speech is Donald Trump and his administration. And then, of course, he cites the example that Donald Trump has prohibited the AP, the Associated Press, from press briefing rooms, the Oval Office. I don't even think that they have taken their press credentials from the press briefing room, the White House press briefing room. There's talks about it. I think so far they've only limited the Associated Press in the Oval Office, which is an even extra, it's affording journalists an extra privilege. Okay, this is a privilege to go to the Oval Office. This is his office. Okay, Trump's office. And he's invited them to the Oval Office briefings, which I don't think a whole lot of presidents have done, Oval Office briefings. In fact, that's really, really nice and transparent of him, and very pro-journalism, to invite journalists into his office and to take questions. Now, he didn't afford the Associated Press that opportunity because of the AP style book. The AP style book, I've talked about this several times on the show. This is what my professors referred to as the journalism Bible. Okay, the Bible, which is so what would you call that? Blasphemous, calling something the Bible when it's not, and it's very anti-Christian, and I can't believe I even thought of it as anything else. Other than blasphemous, when the professors would refer to this AP style book as the Bible. But this is a big, thick book. I wonder if I've got mine around here somewhere. Actually, I think I threw it away because I was pissed when I became, a conservative after my liberal education. But this is a thick book, and it basically is Orwellian in the sense that it polices speech. So as a journalist, you are not allowed to lowercase the word black when referring to black people. So you're probably reading articles and you notice that white is lowercased and black is uppercased. That is deliberate, and journalists are following a guide, the AP style book, and there's even a grammatical style that journalists have to write in, and it's called AP style. So if you lowercase black, then you're out of AP style. You get a failing grade in journalism school. Okay, so you have to, as a journalist, write according to the AP style book in journalism school to get your degree. So also in there, you have to refer to third world countries as developing nations. There's a plethora of examples I could give you. And really what this is, it's George Orwellian, and it polices speech. It's anti-free speech. And, it's conditioning our journalists to write very liberal and biasly. That is why the mainstream media is so biased. It is because of this doctrine that journalists have to abide by. So Donald Trump in the White House said, hey, we don't like this book, and we don't like that you are manipulating the mainstream press with this book, and we are denying you a spot in the press briefing room, the White House press briefing room, which is also a privilege to be in, by the way, like the Oval, not as much of a privilege because there's way more spots than in the Oval Office. His Oval Office is only so big, right? But the press briefing room, it's only so big. And what's really exciting is you have Caroline Leavitt, youngest press secretary ever, by the way, to come out and say, hey, we're all about independent journalism. Whoever wants press credentials, you can apply for it. We're no longer going to just go with the status quo and give press credentials to, the same actors. So that's the Associated Press. I'll be right back. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. J.D. Vance responded to this British-American journalist, Mehdi Hasan. He tried to say that, it's anti-free speech what Donald Trump is doing. What Donald Trump is doing, most presidents don't do this, where they invite the press into the Oval Office. That's his office. It's a privilege to go to the Oval to ask the president questions. I think it's genius. He has, allowed for journalists to go in there, but only certain journalists are afforded the press credentials, as there is limited space. Same with the press briefing rooms. I don't think that the AP has been banned officially from the press briefing room yet, but the AP, being somebody that went to journalism school, I know what the style book is. I've talked about it before on the program. This is what's referred to very blasphemously by Illinois State professors, at least, as the Bible. So when you go to journalism school, if you do not write according to the AP style book, then you will be failed, okay, as a journalist, and you will not get your degree. Okay, so they have conditioned our mainstream press to write according to the AP style book. An example would be in the AP style book, it says that you have to capitalize the word black when referring to black people. And you have to lowercase the word white when referring to white people, because black people, they have been historically marginalized, and you have to uplift marginalized people by capitalizing their adjective. So I wish I was joking. I'm not. That is what the AP style book says that you have to do. And you have to, if you want a journalism degree at our liberal institution colleges. Okay. So Donald Trump and Caroline Leavitt think that that's wrong. George Orwellian speech in controlling speech of journalists via the AP style book. That is wrong. And then they said, hey, we're going to deny you press credentials that are a privilege, by the way. So far, they've denied AP from visiting the Oval. This is not anti-free speech. It'd be different if they were barring AP Associated Press journalists from the sidewalks or from contacting congressmen in the publicly funded Capitol buildings and things like that. But this is a limited space. It's a privilege. There's only so many credentials. And it's very exciting that Caroline Leavitt has opened up the press credentials. Now, typically, press secretaries, they go with the status quo of journalists. So the same journalists that have been there probably since I've been born, the 1990s, right? They just allow the same journalists to be in there. She's opened it up to anybody to apply, independent journalists. And that's exciting because why would you not do that? Why would you just, keep the same actors in there and the same? In fact, I think it's more fair that you've opened up the process now and have said, okay, we're denying these people's press credentials because we're going to allow more people into this room, other people who haven't had a chance to report on this White House and on the president's presidency. So we're going to allow other people a chance to come in. And in fact, I think it's more free speech. Because the AP style book is anti-free speech, and then, it controls journalists and it makes them have to write in this AP style. So I want to get to Europe. What's happening in Europe is not even comparable to what's going on here in the United States as it relates to free speech laws. Or an attack on free speech. That isn't even an attack on free speech. They're not attacking journalists. They're not allowing they're not going after journalists for reporting. They're simply saying, hey, you're not allowed in this certain space, which is a controlled environment. But that doesn't mean that you can't approach Donald Trump or, his officials or his cabinet on the sidewalk. It doesn't mean that you can't contact his office. Just means that you're not allowed in this specific room that is a privilege to be in. Okay, so the White House is not stopping AP from living in progressive la la land, but they have no right to the press briefings, okay, especially when the seats are limited. I'm going to be right back playing a clip from Europe, and it's a 60 minutes clip, and it describes what Germany actually does as far as speech laws, and they're going back, I guess, to their anti-speech laws, that they had under the reign of Hitler. So they're going to their fascism style speech enforcement. Germany is. So I'll be right back with that clip from 60 Minutes next. AP, UN is there, Justin? Always propaganda. Yeah, always propaganda. Gotta train MSN, too bad. They're irrelevant now. Thank you, Internet. Yeah, the independent journalism is on a rise. Programs like this are on a rise, on the rise. And, who are these writing? Associated Press. Yeah, who are they associating with? So the reason why they're called the Associated Press is because they're pretty much the daddy. This is the best way I can say it. The daddy of all media, the daddy of all journalists. So AP, also mainstream media, like your NBCs, your ABCs, most media outlets, they'll go to the AP for pictures. They'll go to the AP for videos. Because they lack funding, a lot of these media outlets, because they can't get people to watch their programs anymore because it's just so disingenuous and inauthentic that people have tuned out. And the only reason why they have money to begin with is the government dollars. Okay, so the Associated Press, NPR, Politico, a lot of these journalists have gotten government dollars and are subsidized, and they wouldn't exist otherwise. Okay, so they're not making money because eyeballs aren't on their TV, aren't on the TVs, and people aren't watching. Why? Because they're on the internet, okay, and they're watching the independent journalists. Post Millennial is an independent journalist, though that's on the rise. You've got Breitbart. What are some other ones that I read? Gateway Pundit. All those are on the rise, and they're independent. Now, what does that mean? That means they are not beholden really to advertisers. A lot of that is, a lot of the mainstream media, they're beholden to advertisers. They're beholden to government because of the subsidizing that's going on. They don't have a ton of advertisers. They even have, in some cases, subscriptions, but the independent journalists, a lot of those independent networks, they solely rely on subscriptions or, advertising, and it's a combination of both. So the independent networks like the Post Millennial, they'll have like additional articles that you can read, and you can purchase a subscription to read those additional articles. Now, they are on the rise because they're so popular, and people are actually purchasing the subscriptions. So mainstream media doesn't like that, obviously. They are upset that they're on the rise because they're competition. And people with their feet, they are going to where they like. Okay, so they're moving to these independent journalists, and they're reading there, and they don't mind purchasing a Daily Wire subscription if that means that I get the content that I want. They don't mind, advertisers don't mind because they have the clicks. Advertising with those independent journalists, because they've got the clicks, they've got the views, all of that. So AP, NPR, they're all hurting very, very badly because the government's going to pull their dollars. And the Associated Press is pissed because they need content, and the only thing that was really keeping them afloat is this privilege of being in the press briefing room and getting access to information that nobody else has. But what Caroline Leavitt is doing is she is saying, hey, these people have had access to the White House for a very long time. We're going to change things up, and we're going to allow some of these independent journalists who are actually thriving and whom the American people actually like, we're going to allow them a seat at the table, and we're going to make this more fair, more equitable. Wow, good morning. Hey, I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Now, this is a clip. Germany talks about their free speech laws. Take a listen. Here
It's
we go.
illegal to display Nazi symbolism, a swastika, or deny the Holocaust. That's clear. Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher.
if you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
That sticks around forever.
yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes.
If somebody posts something that's not true, and then somebody else reposts it or likes it, are they committing a crime?
Yeah, in the case of reposting, it is a crime as well, because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or just reposted it. That's the same for us.
The punishment for breaking hate speech laws can include jail time for repeat offenders. But in most cases, a judge levies a stiff fine and sometimes keeps their devices.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked. It's a kind of punishment if you lose your smartphone. It's even worse than the fine you have to pay.
Because your whole life
Yes.
is typically on your phone now.
So, this British American journalist who went after J.D. Vance tried to call him a hypocrite because J.D. Vance was going after Europe, the European continent, and saying that they were anti-free speech. It's not even comparable, folks. Okay, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in Germany, it's not even comparable, okay, to this AP being booted from some press briefings. Okay, they've got no right to these press briefings because the seats are limited. All right. Number one. Number two, it's not even really about the Gulf of America. Like I said, it's the style book. They've been pushing this partisan worldview. In contrast with traditionally and deeply held beliefs that Americans have, that we are all equal. Okay, white, black, doesn't matter your color. We are all equal. So that doesn't mean. So it's not right that you are capitalizing the word black and lowercasing the word white. Language has meaning, spelling has meaning, and because you keep doing that, that is why. And because you have this what professors call a Bible, which is blasphemous. Because you have this style book and you're pushing this partisan worldview on not only, just your outlet, but on all of these other mainstream journalists, and you're pushing this worldview, we're not allowing you a spot at the table. Okay, so you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. I love you so much. Talk to you again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's been Conservative Cat.